Hey guys, and welcome back to Hardware Unboxed. Sitting beside me today is perhaps the surprise packet of the year. It's the Gigabyte Aero 15. Now, I've used a bunch of Gigabyte laptops in the past and I haven't been too impressed. So when I got my hands on the Aero 15, I was blown away by the quality of this laptop, not just for gamers, but also for professionals. This is a really solid device and it's probably the best laptop that Gigabyte has ever made. The hardware inside will be pretty familiar to most of you. We're looking at an Intel Core i7-7700 HQ processor, along with an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1060 6GB GPU. So it's well suited to 1080p ultra quality gaming. We're also seeing 16GB of DDR4 memory and a 512GB SSD in my review unit here. There are a couple of other configurations available depending on your region, with a 4K model coming in the future, but at least as far as most Aero 15s go, this is the hardware that you'll be getting. As always, I want to start by talking about the design, and I think most of you will have noticed straight away the display. I mean, it's a 15.6-inch display, but Gigabyte has gone with the Dell XPS approach of completely removing the display bezels, leading to an awesome viewing experience. I wish more gaming laptop manufacturers would produce laptops with slim bezels. We've seen guys like Razer with the massive bezels around the display of the Razer Blade, but Gigabyte has gone, you know what, we don't need bezels in our laptops. Bezels don't make any sense. We want to give the best viewing experience possible. Let's just get rid of them. Let's make the display fill all the available space. And what it's led to here is an awesome looking device. I mean, thanks to the slim bezels, Gigabyte does claim the Aero 15 only takes up the space of a 14-inch laptop. I will say it is slightly larger than my 14-inch Razer Blade. However, it is definitely smaller than most 15-inch gaming laptops on the market. And it's not just in terms of its footprint, but also in terms of its size and weight. At just 2.1 kilograms and 19 millimeters thick, we're looking at a reasonably portable device. Now, it's not the slimmest or lightest GTX 1060 laptop or lightest 15.6-inch laptop on the market. MSI's GS63 VR is slimmer and lighter in both regards. However, we are seeing a much larger battery. In here, we're looking at 94 watt hours, and it's still an extremely portable device with a smaller footprint than some of its competitors on the market. I think this is well suited to taking around for portable workstation use, or whether you just want to game on the go. Gigabyte has really hit the nail on the head with the portable design here with the Aero 15. The build quality is much better than most Gigabyte laptops I've used in the past, thanks to the use of aluminium around most areas of the device. The lid is reasonably understated as well. No significant amounts of gamer style here, although you can purchase this laptop also in a green and an orange variant, which are certainly extremely vibrant, though I prefer the more black and understated look of the Aero 15 that I was provided with. Around the edges, the plastic that they've used there and the sort of design that has a few seams isn't as nice as some of the aluminium unibody with designs we've seen from other companies, but it's still far better than the all plastic bodies that Gigabyte has used in the past. And at least as far as some of the things like I/O are concerned, Gigabyte has really nailed it here with things like 3 USB 3.0 Type A ports, HDMI 2.0, Ethernet, yes, full-sized Ethernet inside this 19mm slim laptop, as well as an SD card slot, Thunderbolt 3, USB Type C, and a 3.5mm audio jack, and mini display ports. So a lot of ports to be found in this laptop, and for creative professionals that require that SD card slot, or for those that want to attach multiple displays through one cable provided through Thunderbolt 3, the Aero 15 has all of that there, and you can't really complain about the I/O that Gigabyte has provided. The one downside to these slim bezel laptop designs is the positioning of the webcam. It has to be placed below the display on the Aero 15, and that does lead to an awkward angle. So for those that use their webcam often, you might not be too happy with the webcam placement here. And also the speaker system in the Aero 15 is pretty tinny, although that's to be expected from most gaming laptops. I was pretty impressed with the keyboard that Gigabyte has included here. We are looking at rubber dome keycaps, of course, as you'd expect in a laptop this thin, but the travel distance is reasonably good and has a very clicky response that leads to a great typing experience. It's also, of course, well suited to gaming, and you get full RGB backlighting support that's customizable through Gigabyte's Fusion utility. Not as good as the Razer Synapse utility for, adding a whole range of features and functionality to your RGB keyboard, but you still get quite a large range of customizability available here. As far as the trackpad is concerned, Gigabyte has once again gone for ELAN hardware. I've used a ton of ELAN trackpads in the past and all of them have been garbage, but on the Aero 15 it's actually surprisingly solid. The tracking experience is good, it's not as good as some of the other options that we've seen, and support for gestures is reasonable as well, which is a big surprise for the ELAN trackpad, and it makes it reasonably easy to use on a day-to-day basis, though of course for gamers and most professionals I'd still recommend plugging in an external mouse to get the most out of the Aero 15. It's not just gamers that Gigabyte is targeting for the Aero 15, it's also creative professionals thanks to its X-Rite Pantone display certification. X-Rite is a well-known color calibration company. In fact, they make the tool that I use to test all displays that I receive, and what this certification means is that the Aero 15's display is factory calibrated to the sRGB spectrum out of the box. I was a little bit skeptical because I tend to think color calibration at the factory doesn't always work too well, but when I got my hands on the Aero 15 it blew me away with its color accuracy. As we move into SpectraCal CalMan 5, we can see just how decent this display is. 280 nits of brightness is a little bit lower than I'd normally like, but a contrast ratio of 1200:1 and reasonable viewing angles tend to make me think that this 15.6-inch 1080p panel is more IPS than TN, although it is limited to just a 60 Hz refresh rate. But when we're looking at color accuracy, white level average of 6520K is basically dead accurate, and an average grayscale Delta E2000 value of just 0.56 is fantastic for a laptop. This is by far the most accurate display that I've tested in a laptop so far, with a value of under 1.0 considered indistinguishable from true accuracy and therefore suitable for professional users. Color performance was also excellent. In our saturation sweeps, the Aero 15 reported an average Delta E2000 value of 1.16, while in our custom color checker test we saw an average value of 1.53. So it doesn't quite hit the under 1.0 mark that I'd ideally like to see for creative professionals, but the Aero 15 still blows all the other offerings on the market completely out of the water, and even with third-party calibration you can't achieve significantly superior results to what the Aero 15 provides out of the box. So for creative professionals, if you want to do color accurate work, the Aero 15 really is the only laptop I've tested that actually comes close to providing that experience directly out of the box. It's time to talk about the stuff that you guys I'm sure are most interested in, the performance. So inside this laptop, as I mentioned earlier, Core i7-7700HQ quad-core CPU, as well as the GeForce GTX 1060 6GB GPU. In my review unit, 16GB of RAM and a 512GB SSD, but if you open up the laptop, you will find that this is just a single channel configuration. There's a spare DIMM slot available for you to simply slot in another DIMM and go straight up to 32GB with no worries, and there's also a free M.2 slot allowing you to easily expand on the storage pretty easily, although 512GB out of the box is still reasonably decent. One thing you won't find here, no 2.5-inch drive bay slot, but again, the free M.2 slot should be enough for most people who want to upgrade the storage in the future, and it's reasonably accessible simply by removing the base cover. Anyway, let's dive into some benchmark graphs, and we'll start off as always with PCMark. We'll take a look at the home workload, and the Gigabyte Aero 15 here performs around the same mark as a lot of other i7-7700HQ devices. And this is largely the same in the creative workload, posting a very reasonable score here for something with the GTX 1060 inside. And for those that want to use this device as a workstation, the PCMark work test reveals another very solid score for the Aero 15. Moving on to our encoding benchmarks, and as this device is targeted towards creatives, encoding videos and so forth might be something that you want to do on the Aero 15, and its Cinebench R11.5 score is very solid on both the multi-threaded and the single-threaded test. No performance concerns here, and again the 7700HQ falls among the range of other laptops with this CPU that we've tested in the past. In our X264 encoding benchmark, another fantastic solid result from the i7-7700HQ. It blows out any Ultrabook completely out of the water, so if you're after doing stuff like video editing, you'll definitely want to upgrade to the quad-core 7700HQ that a laptop like this provides. In the WinRAR compression benchmark, this laptop does suffer from having just a single channel memory implementation, so it's a little bit slower than other laptops with the 7700 HQ inside, but still a solid showing nonetheless. And you'll see similar results in MATLAB, which can be a bit memory bandwidth limited as well. So for those who are engineers, slotting in extra DIMM into that device to give you 32 gigabytes of RAM and also improve memory bandwidth might improve your overall experience here. Solid state performance was outstanding. The 512GB SSD in my device was a Samsung SM961 PCIe NVMe drive, so we're seeing sequential read and write speeds above 1.5 gigabytes per second. Not quite as good in the random results, but still very solid and falls among the range of other gaming laptops that I've reviewed. Moving on to 3D Mark, we just want to see how the GTX 1060 performs up against a range of other devices. Make sure it's working perfectly here in the Time Spy benchmark. There's no surprises here that the GTX 1060 performs as expected. It's around 30% slower than the GTX 1070 if you wanted to spend more money and get a laptop with that GPU inside, but it is around 45% faster than the last generation GTX 970M in GPU limited workloads, so there is definitely a reason to upgrade from those older generation laptops to something with the GTX 1060 inside. Moving on to gaming, we'll first start with some of the older titles. In Tomb Raider Ultimate preset, 55 frames per second average with a 1% low of 41 FPS puts it in the same range as other GTX 1060 laptops. In Metro Last Light's very high preset, a 76 FPS average is a very solid result with a 1% low of 53 FPS in this situation. In BioShock Infinite, another game that runs really well on the GTX 1060, just over 100 FPS at 102 FPS, and we're seeing a 1% low of 49 FPS, pretty typical for this laptop in this game. Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor, 87 FPS average here at maximum quality settings with a 1% low of 62 FPS. So in this older title, you'll be getting a fantastic experience on the Aero 15. In Grand Theft Auto 5, we're seeing an average frame rate of 57 FPS at maximum quality settings with a 1% low of 40 FPS. You might want to drop the settings a little bit to achieve a higher 1% low, but nevertheless, this laptop does run Grand Theft Auto 5 very well. In Rise of the Tomb Raider, which is the most intensive benchmark in our suite here, a 29 FPS average is below 30 FPS, so it's not delivering a fairly playable experience by any stretch. You'll want to drop the settings down here to the high level, which delivers around a 63 FPS average with a 44 FPS 1% low, making it very playable. In Deus Ex Mankind Divided, we are seeing an average frame rate of 39 FPS with a 1% low of 32 FPS. So not the best experience here on ultra settings. So if you wanted to drop it down to the high quality settings, those frame rates are boosted significantly. But if you're keen on 30 FPS gaming, the GTX 1060 isn't too bad here. And again, the GTX 1060 inside the Aero 15 is well suited to 1080p, very high to ultra quality setting gaming across a range of games, especially for those that want to be targeting around the 50 to 60 FPS mark. You will need to drop the quality settings from sometimes, but the Aero 15 provides a very solid gaming experience nonetheless in a quite portable form factor. I also wanted to talk about the cooling solution because Gigabyte has done a really good job of keeping the Aero 15 cool and quiet under operation. To be clear, it's not silent. I mean, the fans do spin up and you can hear them, but I've definitely heard louder GTX 1060 laptops, the Razer Blade being one example of a laptop that's slim and portable but very loud during operation. The Aero 15 is nowhere near as loud and it runs significantly cooler. In the ID64 system stability test, the CPU sat at just 86 degrees Celsius while the GPU is at 75 degrees Celsius, which is very cool for a GTX 1060 laptop with this hardware inside. And when you get into a gaming session, the CPU temperatures drop even further to around 78 degrees Celsius. So a really solid result from the cooler inside the Aero 15 and a testament to Gigabyte's high quality cooling solution engineering. Keeps this laptop cool and reasonably quiet during gaming, and that's what you want to see. In terms of battery life, there's an enormous 94 watt-hour battery inside this laptop. I expected it to perform a little bit better than it did considering how large the battery is, but it still manages to obliterate some of the other thin and light GTX 1060 laptops on the market like the MSI GS63 VR. It doesn't perform quite as long as the Razer Blade does with similar hardware inside, but it's still nonetheless a solid result that falls towards the lower end of Ultrabooks in terms of a comparison there. I think most people will be satisfied with the battery life that this is laptop provides off the charge. It's not nearly as bad as some other gaming laptops on the market. At the end of the day, the Aero 15 is genuinely one of the best gaming laptops on the market at the moment. It has a fantastic design with those slim bezels around the sides, and the display itself is X-Rite Pantone certified, which means it is color accurate out of the box. The hardware inside is fantastic. i7-7700HQ and the GTX 1060 6GB are well suited to gaming at 1080p around ultra quality settings at 60 FPS. And of course, if you're a creative professional, this laptop is very well suited to rendering videos and doing all those sorts of things that you'd expect from a quad-core CPU. We're also seeing decent battery life from the 94 watt-hour cell and some upgradability with the free M.2 slot and a free DIMM slot inside this laptop. The keyboard, very solid, very clicky, and with full RGB backlighting, and the Elan trackpad surprised me a lot in terms of how not awful it is. So Gigabyte has really hit the nails on the head with the Aero 15, and this is by far the best laptop that they've produced so far. In terms of pricing, the Aero 15 is priced around the same as the Razer Blade, so in the US that's $1,900 US, and in Australia $2,900 dues. However, at that price you do get a 512 gig SSD compared to 256 gig in the Razer Blade, and I really think you need 512 gig to actually be able to install more than just a few games, and in the Razer Blade that will cost you a few $100s more. So the Aero 15 is pretty much a cheaper alternative to the Razer Blade, and it packs largely the same sort of quality. It's portable, it packs fantastic hardware, decent battery life, and that X-Rite Pantone certified display blew me away out of the box. It's a really solid device from Gigabyte and one that I can highly recommend. Anyway, that's it for this review of the Aero 15. I really hope I don't have to send it back anytime soon. It's a fantastic device and I do want to spend a bit more time with it. Anyway, you can check out the written review on techspot.com. Links to our Patreon are below if you want to support the channel, and I'll catch you in the next one.